On today's episode of Locked on Wild, does anybody actually know what's going on with Kirill Kaprizov?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us to recap a come-from-behind win on the road for the Wild against Detroit to start off the rest of the season. We'll talk about Kirill Kaprizov's timeline because there was a lot of discussion about that over the weekend. So we'll try to get the official definitive word on what's going on. And we will also take a look at just where things are at in the Central Division right now as we get into the final push down the stretch. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked on Wild, and joined, as mentioned, by Alex Micheletti. It is a victory Micheletti Monday here because the Wild were able to pick up a nice little comeback win against the Detroit Red Wings, who they'll play again on Tuesday. But, Alex, it was a 3-1 deficit heading into the third period, and midway through the period, everything flipped, and the Wilds get the game-tying goal. And Marco Rossi, after sitting in the penalty box to start OT, he hops off the bench, and he gives the Wild the winner.
Yeah, the refs the entire game were really inconsistent. You know, Patrick Kane kind of flopped in overtime there to draw a penalty, and so that was just chaos. Kane almost scored. Fleury, got his shoulder on his shot. It almost went in. So puck don't lie. And then Rossi goes in there and kind of fumbles with the puck, but it still gets in past Cam Talbot, who Talbot looked awesome for Detroit too. So it was a good goaltending battle there, and nice to get 2 points on the road there in a tough building to play in Detroit.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's interesting because it was a game that featured a lot of what we've seen all season. There were stretches of play that the Wild just, it didn't look like they had it. And the Red Wings score within the first 22 seconds of the third, like just right off the drop. And you're at that point, you're like, this could get out of hand. And then all of a sudden, and I think it was the Brock Faber hit, to be honest, that kind of energized the team.
Yep.
And it's no surprise that the two players that jumped in to try to make DeBrincat atone were the two that ended up having the biggest impact on the rest of the game, and Matt Boldy and Marco Rossi.
Yeah, thank goodness, because I was like, oh, here we go, Matt Boldy taking that penalty. I was frustrated just because the penalty kill's been so bad. And of course, they score off it immediately, but on another controversial call there. He made up for it. Even if it was a dumb penalty, it did get him engaged in the game. And so that's nice to see. And he was picking up the physicality in the Four Nations too. So that's transferred over a little bit. Just got to make sure you don't go past the line just with the way the penalty kill is. He's playing with confidence, and knows that he's coming from it was a made up tournament that he hung with the best players, some of the best players in the world. So that was nice, and nice to have a little pulled goalie, extra attacker magic, and I did not expect Marcus Foligno to get the tying goal there, but he was Johnny on the spot, and just a nice overall win. And what more can you say about Marc-Andre Fleury? I mean, he kept him in that game because Detroit, especially in that second period, they were just guns a-blazing.
Yeah, they really Detroit really took the game over there for a while. And you look at some of the other things that happened throughout the game. Vinny Hinostroza scored. Now this is an
PP1. I was like, what is he doing out there? It was like the meme where the polar bears in Texas. Yeah, it's just like what's going on?
Yeah, and I was listening in the I was listening on the radio a little bit because I had some playoff games on Saturday, so I had a chance to just catch a brief amount of time of the game, and from the sounds of it, he baseball batted the goal in.
Yeah, it was really weird because he initially got the tip, and then Talbot, he had no idea where the puck was, and it popped up in the air, and then he batted it in past Talbot. So yeah, that was crazy. I was not expecting him to be on the power play, but he kind of made it work. Right. He was kind of the net front guy there for a bit, and that was they needed that one big time to stay in the game there.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you can have a guy in Vinny Hinostroza who's just a waiver claim because you need bodies, and he ends up looking pretty good. I mean, he's a guy that is not bothered by shots on goal, which there are plenty on the team, or there are a handful on the team that seem to be. So it's one of those things that I just look at as the season unfolds, and I'm like, he's playing better than some of the guys that have been on the team all season, and he just got here. So
yeah, it's a guy that probably realizes it's his last shot to stay in the NHL, and he's kind of running with it, which is great, because how many times have we seen Wild players, or the fringe guys, and then they don't do anything with their opportunity, and then they're back down in the AHL. We can think of Juhar Kahari. There's just a bunch of, remember him? There's just a bunch of guys. Like, I know Devin Shore's. There's some guys that are just like barely hanging on in the NHL, and Vinny's. He's played a little over 400 games in the NHL. So I mean, he knows how to stick in this league.
Yeah, he has what it takes. He knows what needs to happen in order to stay in the league, and it puts the Minnesota Wild in a position with now a nice little winning streak, 3 games in a row that they have been able to collect, and they keep pace with Dallas.
And what's huge is Colorado's lost twice this weekend, so that's a huge swing in points.
Yeah, they lost 3-1 in their most recent game against the St. Louis Blues, which is Jordan Binnington, I guess, just running with his Four Nations face-off performance.
It'd be interesting to see if they trade, if they try to trade him, just try to take advantage of this little hot streak, because St. Louis is not in the playoff spot. So
no, and they won't be. No, because that team is bad. So, but thank you for beating Colorado. We appreciate that quite a bit. So the Wilds, they've won 3 in a row. They now are they're a couple points behind Dallas, but Dallas has a couple of games in hand. Or actually, no, they're tied in games played with 57. And the Wild are 4 points behind them. They're also 4 points up on the Colorado Avalanche. And all we've been saying all along is just, hold serve. Just keep pace until Kirill Kaprizov is ready to return. But who knows when that'll be? Because, there was a firestorm over the weekend in regards to Bill Guerin's comments made on the radio, and interpretation of said comments. So we're going to try to set the record straight because I listened to everything that was put out there, and I guess well, we'll tell you after the break. Lot to discuss in the Kirill Kaprizov front, and we will discuss when we come back here on Locked on Wild. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I literally just picked up a bag at the grocery store yesterday. Honey roasted, no shell. Cannot get any easier to enjoy. An amazing snack because you no longer have to just sit on the couch and peel them, crack them out of the shell, and sometimes you get the ones that you can't open. Just a nightmare. But no shells takes all the work out of it for you. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. wonderfulpistachios.com. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. And for those that were hoping to catch Denny's latest show, unfortunately, Denny under the weather here this weekend. So we will be looking to move that some point here this week. I have a busy week this week with, I think, right around 5 section playoff games this week. I can't really definitively say because, the schedule is day to day. So,
hey, shout out to Dodge County girls hockey team for winning the first state title for a team down there in southern Minnesota. Your neck of the woods. So shout out to them. Yeah, the section's best time of the year, and my dad's Hibbing squad beating Hermantown for the first time in sections in 20 years, and they're in the section championship on Wednesday night versus Cloquet. So we're on the Blue Jackets.
That's what we like to see. Mankato West will try to take down Laverne in the section championship game Wednesday night.
Good luck to the Scarlets.
I will be on the call there, so can tune in for that. Girls basketball tonight, I believe. Girls basketball tomorrow. Hockey Wednesday, and then potentially more playoffs on Thursday, and maybe more on Saturday. At this point,
yeah.
You just go day to day. That's really all you can do.
Hey, you're a Minnesota Wild player. When there's an injury,
yeah,
just
exactly.
Day to day could turn into week to week, month to month.
Well, and it's so funny because so Bill Guerin was on KFan after, or actually, I think he was on. I think he was on with Dan Barrero.
Yes, and
was asked, because why not? How are things going with Kirill Kaprizov? And Guerin said, well, he's going to be out longer than we anticipated. But here's the thing. Like, I get the concern, but we got to start with the fact that his initial timeline was expected to be 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's what Russo was reporting. Yeah, so I mean, I think teams always want to, say that they expect him to be right at the the earliest of the timeline, and that's clearly not not what's happening, and what we think it is, that's going to affect your skating, and he can't even get on the ice, so. It's a sensitive area, in that lower body kind of region, and that's your engine. And if you can't turn it on, it's what are you gonna do? You just gotta continue to rest.
Yeah, he has not started skating as of yet, but what I take he's going to be out longer than we expected to mean is that it's going to be closer to 6 than it is to 4. I don't go to the level of like, oh, this means he's going to be out 2 to 3 months. This means he's going to be done for the rest of the regular season. I'm certainly not going to try to jump on what has been initially reported and consistently reported since the surgery happened. 4 to 6 weeks was the timeline from the time the surgery happened to right now. We're in week 3. Michael Russo pointed that out in a Twitter exchange over the weekend. We're in week 3 right now. And so what I take Bill Guerin to mean is that it's going to be more like 6 weeks than it is 4.
Yeah, it's and there's no need to panic right now with him because look, they just beat Detroit, and if they beat him on the road, you would, but who knows at home? But it seems like it's a team that they've had some success against, and if they were to start falling out of a playoff spot, then maybe it's panic mode and you try to get him back, but. This could end up maybe being a LTIR Vegas style, the loophole. So we'll see.
I said that over the weekend too. I said, you know what the Wild should just do is pull the Vegas or pull the Tampa Bay and just use the additional money to bring like Brock Besser in, because guess what? Vancouver now is they're in trouble. So
they have all sorts of issues, and there was that report over the weekend too that Brock and Vancouver are on different spots of them negotiating, and
imagine that.
Yes, it does not seem like he wants to be there long term.
No, I don't know if I would either, because you have Elias Pettersson, the friendly ghost, just occupying a massive amount of cap space and a roster spot with zero production.
The Tony Snell in the Four Nations.
Unbelievable.
I don't know what's going on with him. It seems like they picked the wrong guy to trade because JT Miller's, he's off to a great start in New York. He had a couple goals yesterday in their win against Pittsburgh, poor Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, Sidney Crosby needs to be rescued. Just not the Colorado Avalanche, though, please.
Right? No,
like we don't need that. But I think that would be just so on point for the Minnesota Wild to actually go that route, and then for Gary Bettman in the offseason to say,
"Close that loophole."
No more. Nobody's doing that. We're finding the Minnesota Wild a first-round draft pick, and we are forbidding teams from doing that again.
After seeing how Brock Nelson looked in the Four Nations, I think a lot of people were like, I don't know if we want Brock Nelson on the Wild anymore, and I don't know. At this point, if you're choosing between him and Besser, I'd go with Besser.
I think so too, but we'll see, because I've had people ask about like, well, why don't the Wild use the cap space? Because again, as has been reported,
you can't use it if he's going to come back before that. You can't just do a panic trade, and then you're asking guys that have no trade clauses. We need to move you. We need to move you.
Hey, can you help us out here?
Yes. And they're probably not going to do Bill Guerin a solid if that were to happen.
Yeah, they would be pretty upset about that. It bears monitoring, as does the weird medical situation that involved the Minnesota Wild's training staff and Charlie McAvoy. That was another kind of funny Russo bomb on Friday. He was on, and they were talking about that whole thing, because basically the Boston Bruins are not happy with the Minnesota Wild's medical staff for how Charlie McAvoy's injury and subsequent infection was handled. And Russo was like, well, Boston conveniently left out of their statement that this has happened to McAvoy before, and it happened on their watch. And I'm like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, so that's where it's like, it's, you know, like what really what's going on there. And you know, I get it with the Pat Maroon stuff, but you know, they still signed off on the trade. You know,
Yeah.
it's like Bruins on their end could have done a more thorough investigation on that if they. And it's not like, you know what you're getting when you're trading for Pat Maroon. It's not like he was going to be the missing piece to them winning the Stanley Cup last season.
You told us we were getting a 30-goal scorer. He scored 1 goal down the stretch. What's going on?
And I saw, you know, people were including Matthew Tkachuk on there too. It's like, really, you can't blame the Wild's, you know, training, you know, doctors for Matthew Tkachuk. And you know, he kind of made the decision himself to try to play. You know,
yeah,
he clearly. I don't know if you remember when they were showing the guys walking in to that game versus Canada, and both him and Brady were limping. Just Brady didn't play yesterday. So,
and that's a perfect way to bring this full circle too. Is a lot of the times the physicians, the training staff, they give suggestions on how a situation should be handled, but it's the players' call,
right?
Whether they want to try to play through an injury,
and if they aggravate it, what are you supposed? I mean, it's yeah, you know, it's a physical sport. You know, injuries are gonna happen, and if you're overcompensating for something, it's easy for that to occur.
And this is why Kaprizov initially, tried to play through it, because that was 100% his call. He said, let's try to rest this and see if that works. And if not, then we'll do the surgery.
Yeah. And, this still goes back, I think, to the Logan Stanley WWE slam down on him. It's, when your legs are split like that, wide open, I mean, I don't think you fully, heal. And he came back, and, it just seems like it's popping up again, especially, in the same type of area of where we think it is growing, that sports hernia type of thing.
Many people can't do the splits normally. Imagine awkwardly and quickly being forced to do them.
Right. Against Logan Stanley's like 6'5", 6'6", like big bird out there on skates, and he just fell right on top of 97. Yeah, that was just one of the most awkward things you'll see on the ice.
Oh, good heavens. So we'll continue to monitor, but that's how I take that. Is it's closer to 6 than it is to 4. It's not all of a sudden we're going from 6 to say 9 or 12.
And this is how Bill Guerin operates. He's always in the shadows about injuries, and he wouldn't even say when Kirill had the surgery. And it's just how he kind of rolls. Other teams, they'll give out more information, but he wants to be secretive about it.
Yeah, we're at Fort Knox level security clearance for even just the slightest amount of injury information. You have to go through multiple levels of security, multiple different secure servers. It's pure crackdown on any sort of reporting. So we'll update on it, but it does set up the Minnesota Wild for a final push here to the end of the season. And so we'll just kind of take a look at where the Central and the Western Conference is at right now, because it's pretty much, I would say 7 of the 8 spots are pretty set right now. And so we'll look at who is even still alive and still playing for something as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no place to get in on the action, no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. My favorite part about FanDuel is that whether you are looking to be optimistic about your favorite team and want to throw some futures down or want to bet right along as the game is happening, both options are right at your fingertips. Minnesota Twins have begun spring training. So if you are excited about what they are going to be doing this year, you can go to FanDuel to bet on some futures. But if you want to stay current on the Timberwolves and the Wild, you can do that as well. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. As I mentioned, section playoffs going on for me this week, which means that we are going to be pretty light on the postcasts, unfortunately, especially with the Thursday and Friday games. Might be able to do on Friday. I got to check I got to check the schedule. I won't know probably until Tuesday or so, especially with those 8 p.m. games. It gets dicey, so we'll just update on what we see happen, and we'll if we do have the ability to sneak one in, we'll make sure to let you know. Alex, the current standings in the West: Winnipeg has run and hid. They have an 11-point lead on the Minnesota Wild. They have a 7-point lead.
They've won 9 in a row.
Oh, ick!
Yeah.
I hadn't even seen that. Now I wish I hadn't. But it is interesting. You look at the top 3 in the Central, and they've all won at least 3 in a row. Dallas has, the Wild have, Colorado has lost 2 in a row, but so has Vancouver. It seems pretty set. I would be willing to bet that from the Central there will be 4 that get in.
Yeah, looking like that. Yeah,
because obviously the Jets are going to get in.
Right.
Seems pretty likely that Dallas is going to get in. Seems pretty likely that Minnesota is going to get in because they've got a 10-point lead on Calgary, who is the first team out currently. They have then they have a 13-point lead on Utah, 14-point lead on St. Louis. Anaheim is somehow 6 points out of a playoff spot,
which is how.
Hideous.
Yeah.
And then basically after that, I mean, Seattle, I think, has fallen far enough out that I don't think
they completely fell apart. I don't know why. Just they didn't get the goaltending that they were looking for this season. It's been kind of a nightmare there. It's
been a mess for Seattle. So I don't envision them crawling back in, and then you've got Nashville, who's
just a complete disaster. Yeah, the offseason spending spree has not worked out.
Barry Trotz, that did not work out. And you've got Chicago and St. Louis and San Jose, who have been out of it as well. I mean,
it's a nightmare there.
I think it's going to come down to Vancouver, Calgary, and maybe Utah, but probably those two, Vancouver and Calgary for that final wild card spot.
Yeah, it's the battle of the mid meme. There's not a whole lot of consistency from Vancouver and Calgary. They kind of just seem to be flip-flopping on who wants that last spot. And, Utah, some games they look like world beaters, and others they look like they're the the Blackhawks of the West or the far West. It's just they can't be, they're very young, so I get it, but they they have some talent. So if Vancouver continues to kind of cakewalk, maybe Utah's like, hey, there's an opening, but you would. I don't know, because Vancouver has goalie issues too, so it's like there's and Dustin Wolf is very talented. He's in the Calder running for Calgary, but he's a young goaltender. There's gonna be it's gonna be a roller coaster there, but he's very talented, so we'll see.
And all of a sudden the Avalanche can't score.
Yeah, what in the world? Yeah, they seem like a team that is destined to make another center type move. I don't know if you can think that Casey Middlestad can be your a tops your second line center to win you a cup. So that seems like a team that's destined to try to get another center in there.
He was the second line center on the Team Minnesota that I put together on Friday, which I will say I'm going to turn that into a March Madness type bit for the listeners, because we've got at least 4 teams. I think there are a couple of other states that you could make teams for too, and we'll come up with a way to, for instance, the New York team that we did. No goalies.
You're just gonna have to play with that
one. We'll steal one from one of the boroughs, I guess. Brooklyn, somewhere. Yes. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But Middlestad is, he's definitely a middle six guy, but I feel like he, aside from the stretches where he has, kind of stepped up, he probably is more of a third line guy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that that at this stage in his career, that's where he's probably more comfortable being at.
So we'll see what happens, but I think, and if you look at the Pacific too, Vegas is on top. Edmonton is 2 points behind. The Los Angeles Kings are.
How about Edmonton? Just they have a Stuart Skinner problem. They and their defense, it's just it's a nightmare. You see John Klingberg's playing now again for them. Yeah, they signed him, and now he's in the lineup.
Yikes. Yeah. Their most recent games, 5-4, 6-3, and 7-3 losses.
Yeah.
Yikes.
That's a team that, well, John Gibson, it seems like he continues to get hurt every time he plays now, but that seems like a team that should try to trade for him, because Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, I don't know how that combo got to the Stanley Cup, but it's kind of like they pulled the Colorado, try to outscore their problem.
Yeah, you can't win every game 10-7. Right. It just takes too much of a toll.
They were, you could tell in that game 7 against Florida, this last summer, that guys just looked completely gassed.
Yeah, they had nothing left.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. The Los Angeles Kings have only played 54 games.
They got
to pick that up.
Yep.
So they could pull themselves, if you win all 3, all of a sudden you're right in between Las Vegas and Edmonton. But
that's a team that, they've given the Wild fits the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
It's, very interesting. And of course they have Darcy Kemper there, former Wild goaltender. And it's a team that, and obviously Kevin Fiala too. So he always tries to, get a revenge game going. But it's a strange team to figure out, because they traded for Kevin Fiala because they desperately needed scoring, and now it seems like they need scoring again. I don't know what Rob Blake is thinking.
They have scored fewer goals than the Minnesota Wild, who were the team with the lowest goals for amongst playoff teams, but now the Kings have that honor. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but it feels like the field is pretty much all set. Meanwhile, if you go over to the East,
it's a nightmare that those final the wild card spots. It's it seems like every day a new team is climbing in there.
We're gonna have Johnny Lazarus on later this week, and I'm gonna ask him point blank: does anybody want to win that? Does anybody want that second wild card spot in the East? It doesn't seem like it.
Nope.
So we'll keep an eye on everything here. We've got a couple of other guests lined up for later in the week. So stay tuned for those, and we will see how things go for the Minnesota Wild here as the week unfolds. But that will do it for today's show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and making Locked On Wild part of your daily routine. We'll keep you up to date on when we get Denny's show rescheduled. And if there is any time to do any postcasts here this week, I'll let you know as well. But it is the busy time of year. So we'll keep you up to date on all of the games regardless. And make sure, if you haven't already, that you subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.